Good morning. I'm Melissa Meeks. Thanks for participating in our online asynchronous workshop this week. You've written a little bit. You've given each other feedback using a survey that I designed. And today I'm going to focus on debriefing the feedback that you've given each other and make some recommendations for all writers based on the trends that we can see in the review task. And then I'm going to encourage you to rate the helpfulness of the comments that you've received and build a revision plan that I'll interact with tomorrow. So let's turn to the course. From the instructor side, I can see that about half of our class has done the work of the review. So I want to keep that in mind as we're working through this. So these are not final numbers. It's just a sense of what people have done. I can go a little deeper to see if the half of the class that has done the work, if they're making enough comments. Notice that right now, the folks who have finished have submitted 71 comments, and they've left 2.7 comments per draft, which is really great because I only asked for 2. So I have a sense that the people who are participating fully. That's kind of the first level of reaction to the work that has been exchanged in Eli. The second level of reaction is thinking about what the feedback means for writers. So from the writing feedback tab, I can see the class averages for the trends. So if you read this question and you thought, oh my gosh, I didn't realize Melissa was going to ask us if we covered all the main ideas. This isn't a requirements list, but it probably felt that way to you as a reviewer, and I'm sorry about that. It's a good reminder when you design these reviews how students are going to receive them. I was using it just to find the trends. What were the ideas that we covered in the modules that you read that you were going to use when you're talking about Eli or peer learning with students? And so from a trend perspective, the most popular thing to tell students is that helpful feedback has these qualities, which is great and makes a lot of sense for the task you were given. The least popular thing to talk with students about is about the cognitive load, and how smaller bits of writing and more targeted questions really will help them improve their review and feedback strategies. So that makes sense, but just as a reminder, getting to smaller bits of writing with targeted questions is a really important part of using Eli well. So even if you don't talk about it with your students, make sure you're thinking about how to give students rapid iterations of feedback. From the scaled response question, I ask you to nominate drafts for discussion. And this is where Eli is really powerful because the highest peer-nominated exemplars are available to me in the top 3. So I'm going to show you the first one. And I know it's really small on your screen, so I encourage you, I'm using the browser Zoom functions to make that bigger. You might want to pause the video at this point and read through the draft. One of the things I really like about this model is the way the opening paragraph confronts the bad rap of revision, right? And that it provokes rage, tears, and sort of combination of the two. I certainly relate to that. But I like how this draft kind of centers on a student problem and then talks about how the course itself is going to help students rethink that bad rap. And so it makes some claims about what revision is and how it works, and then shows how the course is going to use both Eli and small group workshops to accomplish this best practice of revision. So I like the layout here. I like the way it's confronting students' fears and taking advantage of that. Let me show you another model that bubbled up from the drafts. So this is a much longer model. You probably will need to stop the video a couple of times to read it in its entirety. But I liked this one because it is, again, talking about what revision is and how to do it and what it accomplishes. And then the other thing that I've really found fascinating here is that it picks up on some of the language from the models where Stuart Silver was talking about peer editing as not being a copy editor, but it adds two other roles for giving feedback. Giving feedback as an audience member and giving feedback as a colleague, as a fellow writer. And so this draft goes on to explain when I read from this vantage point, what am I looking for? And really models the kinds of feedback students can get. So I thought this was a really excellent model that covers a lot of ground, and it might be more than a quick syllabus can handle. But notice how the writer here indicated that this was going to be part of an introductory lecture and would be those face-to-face points. So this is a model I recommend that you come back and look at again, because it really lays out the issues in a great way. This third draft that was nominated by peers introduces the idea of peer review by talking about the drafting process, right? And it starts with this notion that your first idea is probably your most obvious and that no one wants to experience that. And I thought that the comments here for this particular draft were really good, and just asking this writer to really think about audience and think about how the humor that's meant here may not come across to students on a page in the same way that it comes off face to face. So that's a really great insight about the work that we do, and so it's a good thing to remember when you're looking at things that go into your syllabus versus your talking points. Always just remember how students encounter that negativity. I also think that what's good about this one is connecting the work that students are doing in class with the work they're going to do in jobs. And that they don't often get the luxury of giving feedback, or you have to beg people to give feedback for them. I've been in the corporate world for 4 years and now back to teaching in the academy, and I've actually never had this problem. Getting feedback comes in a variety of ways. The challenge for me has been knowing how to use that feedback and how to reject it when it wasn't going to actually help me. So I think helping students understand that getting and giving feedback is how work gets done in the world, but that learning to use that feedback productively is a challenge. And so it's great to be able to work on that in class. So from these three models, I hope let me minimize now so that we can go back to this. From looking at these three models, I hope you have an idea of how you might go back and revise your syllabus blurb or your talking points to include more of the ideas from the models, or more of the ideas from peers who are writing to their students and framing peer learning in a particular way. I will say that on Friday, when you're enrolled as an instructor in this course, going back and reading these model drafts is a good use of your time, because you'll be able to see them on your own screen and scroll as slowly as you need to. Let me walk you through a couple of other things that you need to do as writers to benefit from the feedback that you've received. This is a random selection of contextual comments. If we were using this in real time, I would call attention to a comment that I think does a really good job, like this one. And so this one reacts to the passage as an audience member, and then gives a question that will help the writer do more work in that particular place. And so it's modeling, describe, evaluate, suggest, the model that we talked about in the readings that you did for today. But this is a comment that actually does that and will be really helpful. So as an instructor, I would be looking for helpful comments to encourage writers to attend to. Let me show you one writer's feedback and suggest the actions you can take to close the gap between getting feedback and making revision. Okay, so as an instructor, I clicked on Classmate 8, and this allows me to see the review report that Classmate 8 also sees. And so I can see all the feedback this student received. Notice that 50% of the people who read the draft notice these claims. And so that's a number that kind of confuses students, because I think, how did I get 50% on this? But what that means is that only half of the people who have read their draft noticed that particular theme. So that's an invitation to figure out, well, were the other 50% reading too quickly to notice that I covered this idea? Or was that idea too embedded and I need to foreground it more in my writing? So this gives students just a sense of how many people who read their draft agree that it had a particular feature. And so this particular writer didn't convince everybody of anything, and so she or he may have to go back and figure out which themes they want to make more prominent, if any. The second thing is that this classmate only received 1-star rating, and it was a high rating, and so that and she got an explanation here too. So this flow from looking for specific features and trait identification, and then making evaluation, and then explaining the evaluation that you made, sets up a virtuous cycle so that students are well prepared to give good reasons for why they rated a draft in a particular way. We've also, in a real classes, we've seen that this feedback is often the most powerful thing students receive. This writer also got comments from 2 different reviewers, and you can see how each comment is available in a separate box. I can click to view it in context, just like we were seeing before. And then the writer has the responsibility of rating the helpfulness of this feedback. Because it's a 5-star scale, just like Amazon, to be meaningful, most comments should get 3 stars. At Amazon, if all products got 5 stars, it would be useless to us as a reputation system. So one of the things that you work with students in doing in Eli is using that helpfulness scale to think of 3 as good, as average, right? Like 3 is great. 5 is just extraordinary, and 1 is just extraordinarily bad. So one of the activities you can do as a writer is to run through this comment and just think about how helpful is that comment to you for revision. Is it inspiring you to change something big about your writing? And if it does, that's probably 3 stars. And then use 4 and 5 sparingly. As the instructor, I can also endorse comments that I think do great work. And so by endorsing, I tell the reviewer and the writer that this is a comment that is really worth paying attention to. And so I like this particular comment that because it's addressing student fears and it's extending the writer's notion of what she needs to do in that passage, but it also finishes with praise. And offering praise that actually teaches something is quite challenging. And so I like the way this one is a model that if we were in a longer class, we would come back to this and talk about ways of giving praise that actually leads to revision and helps writers improve over the long haul. So your responsibilities as a participant in this activity are to look at your feedback and to decide what changes you're going to make to your draft. You can indicate the helpfulness of comments. The other button that you have on your side that I can't see here is to add to revision plan. So to participate in Thursday, make sure you put at least 2 comments in the revision plan, and we'll work through that on another day. So this is going to complete the video for talking with writers about writing, and I'll give you a second video that talks about the moves that I've made as the instructor in this course. Thanks.